It's the best sports podcast on YouTube. It's Fluent and Chill with me, Anthony K from Sports Fluent, and my main man Jermaine from Chilltown Hoops. Jay, how you doing, man?
Sir. Hey, man, we got basketball, big stuff
Ooh,
today, y'all.
we're going back.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna talk about some greats.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna debunk some theories.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to do one little quick promo though, because on Sports Fluent, I had a guest on. It's going to come out on Thursday this week. So right in between Fluent and Chill, NBA edition Wednesday, NFL edition Friday. And he has proof that Will Chamberlain didn't score 100 points. So look for that one coming on Thursday. I'm going to send it to you because you know how I feel about when he reached out to me and said he had proof. I was all in.
Of course you were. I already know that you were. Absolutely.
So we're going to talk about that on Thursday. But today, I hate when I'm right on bad things. Like, I love when I'm right. I love telling people I told you so. But when it's about something negative, I actually don't feel good. And I think I was right so far about Zion. So we're going to talk about Zion. Jokic might be the most underrated reigning MVP in the history of basketball. We're going to talk about the all-time greats and why I believe we got to completely rethink the way we rate our players, because I think it's too easy for centers. And that's why most of our top 10 lists, top 20 lists are flooded with them.
Mm-hmm.
But first, speaking of centers question mark, I want to talk about Tim Duncan. I got into a debate yesterday, and I said, although Tim Duncan played or was listed by the NBA as a center for the majority of his career, so 9 years as a power forward, 10 years he's listed as a center, I rank him still as, I think, one or two power forwards of all time.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm wondering, should I? If he's listed as a center for the majority of his career, should we then shift him over to center? And in that case, where does he rank against the Kareems and the Wilts and the Russells of the world?
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with Tim Duncan. Obviously, he comes into the league. He was drafted. David Robinson is there. It's the Twin Towers. Robinson, clearly the center. Tim Duncan plays the power forward.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think he fits?
Well, we got to start the conversation, Tone, with the fact that he actually played center in college. He played center in Wake Forest.
Yes.
And when he got to San Antonio, well, they already had a 5-man, but they were not going to pass on Tim Duncan, and they weren't going to trade him neither. So what we'll do is we'll figure this out like they did with Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson. We'll absolutely do that. Now, Tim Duncan traditionally was going to be a 5-man, but they moved him to the power forward, and he was so good at playing the 4 that they just kept him there, and it worked out for them. So the early part of his career, the first 9 years of his career, so we're talking from 97 to 2006, he played the 4. And those were his most productive years. Yep. Won the NBA championship 3 times, won the league MVP twice, was in the top 10 for those, I think for those 6 years, for those 8, 9 years. I think he was in the top 10 in defensive player of the year, I think 8 times. And he was in the top 5 4 times. So those were his most productive years. When he played the 5, it was on the back end of his career. I think he started playing the 5 in 2007. I think it was 2007 that he started playing the 5. And he was good. He was still really good. I mean, he made first team All-NBA a number of different times. He made first team All-NBA in 2014, 2013. Yeah, 2013 when they went to the NBA Finals, and he played the 5. But I think that his most productive years were him at the 4. That's why he's listed at the 4. And when I think about him playing the 5, had he played the 5 his entire career, I mean, he can definitely be in the same category and in the same conversation with Jabbar and Olajuwon, and because I actually got him ahead of Olajuwon on my all-time list. So we could definitely have him. We could definitely have him in that conversation because he was a consummate 5-man.
Where do you have him on your power forwards list?
Number one.
Yeah, so then, but as a center, is he 3, 4?
I don't think he was better than Jabbar. I don't think he was better than Chamberlain. I don't think he was better than Russell. I don't think so.
So best case scenario 4.
Yeah.
It changes, right? The conversation.
It does. It completely changes because I got him ahead of Shaq on my all-time list, but as a traditional five man, I don't know if he was a better five man than Shaq, but when we talk about a better overall player, that's something completely different.
So let me run through some of these and bear with me because I'm looking down because I want to get it right. And I'm going to start in 03 because in 03, David Robinson's still on the Spurs, and it's him and Batir and Kevin Willis. Wow. Those are the guys who are listed as centers on the Spurs. The following year, the only two centers listed are Rasho Nesterovic and Kevin Willis. So even though Robinson now is gone, Tim Duncan's still listed as a power forward in 03-04. I think it's here in 05. Correct? No, you know what? In 05, he's still a power forward. So he does play. I always, when I think back, I always think it was once David Robinson retired, he became the five. But it wasn't. They still brought in other guys. So they have Nazir Muhammad and Rasho again as the two centers, and he's the power forward. That's the year they win the NBA championship in 04-05. 05-06, it's still Nazir Muhammad, Nesterovic, Alberto. So I think you're right. I think he doesn't shift to the five. You hit the nail right on the head. It was in that 06-07 season where they win another chip, because the only listed centers then are, if you know any of these guys, let me know. Jackie Butler, Tim Duncan, and Francisco Elson. Those are the only centers on the team.
I do remember Elson.
Okay, yeah, I remember Elson too.
I do remember him.
Duncan and Elson, Mahiney, Alberto the following year, but Duncan's still a center. And as I go forward, the reason I'm bringing this up is when you get into now kind of the 08, 09 and on, it's Tim Duncan and Alberto. Those are the only two centers on that team. Now I get it. People are going to say, well, the fours can play fives, but I'm just going by what's listed. So you don't really have any other, people for those last, when he's, it's 10 years.
Right. Now you got also to remember, Tone, that when he played with David Robinson, he was able to expand his game, because when he played with David Robinson, that was during the traditional five man who played on the box, primarily. He was able to shoot the open 15-footer, the open 18-footer, but his game was primarily on the box, and he got stuff in transition. As the four man, I'm the dirty work guy, but I'm also the guy like Malone. I'm also the guy, who can step out and make jump shots. I'm also the guy who can get buckets in transition and do things like that, as opposed to now I'm playing the five and now I got to sit on the box. Now I got to do offensively. When I'm involved offensively, I got to do what a traditional five man does. I think he was better at the four overall.
Yeah. And let's listen. The game has evolved in terms of traditional positions. However, let's maybe to your point, let's clarify. The traditional five was someone who played down low on the box, would post moves. Defensively was typically a shot blocker, a rim protector. Like that's the traditional. The power forward was, hey, we really need him to grab rebounds, right? Probably play in the high post, set screens, hit that open mid-range jumper. That was the power forward, right? They would do like a high-low a lot of times. And then you had your guards playing the wings. So I think that's an interesting point that we bring up, because that's the league he came into. And it changed. It changed where four could play the five position. Heck, now we have 6'9", 6'8" guys playing center. So it has changed. But back then, you're right. So if you had to, if the decision was in your hands, knowing that he played 9 years as the power forward, 10 years at the center, how would you classify Tim Duncan?
Well, what I'm thinking about right now, Tone, is I'm thinking about the Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff, where Fresh Prince said, "I'm the DJ, he's the rapper," but he says, I'm a better DJ than you would be a better rapper. So when I think about Tim Duncan, I think that he's definitely more of a five. He's definitely more of a four man than he is a five. I think he's better at the four spot than he was at the five. And if I had to rate him at the five, I don't think he was better than as not an overall player, but just as a traditional five. I don't think he was better than Jabbar. I don't think he was better than Chamberlain. I don't think he was better than Russell. I don't think he was better than Shaq, and I don't think he was better than Olajuwon. At the five, I don't think he was better.
Playing down low on the block.
No, I don't.
So it's interesting, because this all started with me saying I have Tim Duncan as my top power forward of all time. the discussion was between him. Someone was asking me between him and I want to say Malone. Yeah, it was him and Malone. And the question was, are you sure Tim Duncan is better than Karl Malone? And I said, yeah, I'm sure. And I love Karl Malone on the court, not off the court. And I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure. And here's why. It's because offensively, yeah, Malone averaged more points. Malone scored a lot more points. But when I look at the skill set, the footwork, the defense, don't forget, this is a 15-time all defensive player.
One all time.
Yeah. So I said, that's, as if I say Karl Malone is better scoring, right? Because I think he averaged 24 to Duncan's 19. I said, if I say he's for the bit that he's better, the 5 points that he's better at scoring, I think Tim Duncan is substantially better at all those other things than Karl Malone. And that's why I had him ahead of him. And one of the first comments was, well, of course, because he's a center, he's not a power forward. And I said, listen, well, for all intents and purposes, I want to say that right because someone said I said intensive purposes. I know it's intents and purposes. I do know that.
Right.
I said he's a power forward, right? I don't care what they listed him at. He's a power forward. And it's tough because now you got guys like Curry who are listed as point guards and, are really scoring guards. You have Jerry West, if we go back to who's listed as a point guard, then listed as a shooting guard. Where do you put him? LeBron James, right? So he's listed as a small forward for most of his career. And then the last couple of years, he's a point guard. He's now back to small forward. And people are like, well, no, now he's a power forward. He's the best power forward in the game. I'm like, he's a power forward?
Which one is it?
I don't know which one it is. Right. So it's, there's certain players. It's not a lot, but there's a handful of players that, kind of murky up the waters. So I say, although he was listed as a center for me, even though he was listed as a center for 10 years, he's still a power forward. And I think even though he's listed as a center, a lot of minutes were played, I think, next to a Rasho Nesterovic, a Theo Ratliff, your favorite guy. What's his Tiago Splitter? Tiago, right? They always had at least one other center there so that he can, because I think you're right. I think he thrived, even though he came out of Wake Forest as a center. I think he really thrived as a power forward because he was he's not the big fundamental for nothing.
There's a reason why they call him that.
There's a reason they call him that.
Reason why they call him that, absolutely.
It's not exciting, but man, does it work. I always tell everybody, when I play my men's leagues now, right? I'm 400 years old. And there's guys that are, in their 20s, and they're like, how did you strip the ball? I'm like, because my feet are in the right position. My hands are in the right spot. And you just dribble it into my hand. I actually don't even have to move because I know the way you're dribbling. If I have my hand there, you're eventually going to put it there. I don't have to be fast anymore. I'm fundamental. When you're at my age, you have to be fundamentally sound. So I appreciate that game. Yeah. I hated it back then. I hate it. But now, I really appreciate the fundamentals. So, absolutely. All right. So I think we're going to call him a power forward, which leads us in to our next conversation. If you were to think of your top 10 list, order doesn't matter. And you were to break it down. For me, I believe I have Kareem, Wilt, Shaq, Hakeem, and centers and power forwards. I have, and Duncan. I think I have five. Five of them are centers or power forwards in my top 10. Just thinking, do you know how many you think? How you have? How many you have?
I got 4 or 5 men. 4 of them. I got 4 or 5 men: Chamberlain, Russell, Shaq, and Lajuan. Right, and power forwards. I got Tim Duncan.
All right, so same with me. So, okay, so we have 5 guards. I have 3. I believe you have 2.
Yeah,
if I'm correct.
That's okay. Correct.
So that's 8, and then I have 2 small forwards.
Let's see. I got 2 small forwards. That's correct. No, that's not true, Tony. Let me make sure I get that correct. I got Lajuan, Shaq, Russell, Chamberlain. I got 5 men.
You got 5. Yeah.
I got 5 men. I don't have 4. I got 5 men. 5 men. I got 2 small forwards.
2 small forwards, 2 guards.
2 small forwards and 2 guards. That's correct.
2 guards. And Jordan, Magic. For those that are going to ask, LeBron and Bird are the 2 guards and forwards. Okay. I'm not going to ask you to do this, but when you expand it to your top 20, to your top 30, would you, off the top of your head, believe that still about half are centers, if not a little bit more?
Actually, no, that's when it gets a little tricky. That's when it gets a little murkier, Tone. So when I think about my from 11 through 20, right? When I think about my 11 through 20, from 11 through 20, I got Bryant, Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, Steph Curry, Moses Malone, Dr. J, Kevin Garnett. I'm sorry, Kevin Durant, Kevin Garnett. I think I got Havlicek, and I think I either Havlicek or Dirk Nowitzki, or Barkley of those.
So there's a mix. There's a better mix of guards and forwards.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in the top 10, I have 5. You have 6. So we have 50 and 60% of our top 10 list are centers. Is it because it's easy for a big man in a league like people? We have a lot of recency bias. We talk about the last 10 years, 20 years. However, basketball's been around for a lot longer than that. So if I look back the last 60, let's say 60 years, so 1960. Actually, go back to 1950. Let's start in 1950. So the last 70. Let's do the 75 years. The NBA is 75 years old, right? So through 75 years, the first 75% at least of the NBA was a center. Would you agree was a center-dominated league?
Well, I think that from 1960 to 1984, we're talking 24 years, Tone. I think 16 of the 24 league MVPs from 1960 to 1984. I think 16 or 18 of them were 5 men.
We're 5. Okay.
We're 5.
And you would agree that the way most teams, if not all teams, played was inside out. Get it to your big man. Get it to your big man. Right. The guard's job was to get it, to the wing, who put it into the post, and the postman would,
that was the game.
So my thing is, if the league was centered around centers, and all we did was give it into the center who would turn and sky hook or drop step and dunk, then, and let's be honest, the average height of the NBA players in the 50s, 60s was 6'6". It was then 6'7". It's back down to, I think, 6'6" now again. So the average player, the average center, let's not use current day because the average center now is 6'9". But if you go back, especially at these guys that we're talking about, Chamberlain, Kareem, Shaq, they're all 7+. So if I'm 7'1", the average player is 6 inches shorter than me, and the league says give it into me so that I could turn around and use that huge height advantage and size advantage to score. Isn't it easier for centers to be considered the best? And should we give more weight to a guy that's 6'4" and do if he's scoring the same as a guy who's 7'1" in the 60s? Shouldn't a guy who's 6'4" get more props? And I ask you this, and I've asked you this before: if Kareem is 6'6", he's not skyhooking over anybody. If he's 6'3", he's not skyhooking, right? So listen, I get it. God bless them with height. Okay, but does that make them better basketball players from a skill perspective? Like, are we looking at the wrong thing? Because again, is it easier for taller players to score more?
Well, I think that the problem that we have in Tone is that you're shortchanging these guys. Number one, when you look at a guy like Chamberlain, you look at a guy like Jabbar at 7 foot. Well, those guys had to play against each other, and the league didn't have that many teams. So those guys had to see each other more. All right. So with that being said, you also shortchanging the big man because I think you only focusing primarily on me scoring. I had a ridiculous responsibility as the 5 man. I wasn't just responsible for getting the ball in, you getting me the ball and me scoring. I'm responsible for rebounding. I'm responsible for rim protecting. I'm responsible for slowing down teams and manning the paint. I'm the intimidating factor. I'm responsible for way more things than just you dumping the ball into me and me scoring. So with that being said, that's why the offense was centered around me. I had to learn how to pass too. And there were a lot of guys who couldn't pass. So I had to learn how to do that too as a 5 man. So with that, and to be quite honest with you, Tone, I had to learn how to play guard because at heart, I really wanted to be 7 foot because I wanted to play on the box so bad. I just did.
we all wanted to be 7.
I did. I wanted to be 7. I wanted to be 6'10" so I could play on the block so bad. But with that being said, I think you shortchanging these guys, Tone, because of the responsibility that they had. Now, I can appreciate the logic. Are they better basketball players? Well, if I had to do what what Sidney Moncrief or what Magic did, I probably could do that if I worked on that, but that wasn't my job. But with that being said, that doesn't shortchange that because you did what you did, that doesn't mean that I couldn't do that stuff. And on top of that, I still had much more of a responsibility than you. You didn't have to man the paint. You weren't responsible for rebounding. You weren't responsible for being an intimidating factor. You weren't responsible for blocking shots. You weren't responsible for being the primary scorer. That's all my responsibility. In fact,
so let me play devil's advocate. Well, yeah, of course you were the one blocking shots. You're 7 foot tall with a 7'5" wingspan.
Yep.
It's easier for you to block a 6'4" guard because you're 7 foot tall. I'm a foot taller than my son. I'm going to have a lot easier time blocking his shots because I'm so much taller than him. So you should be blocking shots because you're taller. But guess what? You don't have the responsibility of having to bring the ball up the court. You don't have the responsibility of initiating the offense. You don't have the responsibility of guarding these speedy little guards out here on the perimeter.
Right. And you don't have who's going to get you the basketball? Who's the one that's starting the fast break? That's my job. If it's right. But
if it's not for me giving it into you,
right,
you got nothing.
And you got nothing if I'm not getting you the basketball to give it to me. There's no way that that's happening. So you need me just as much as I need you. It's not like it's a situation where I need you more than you need me. You need me just as much, if not more, because who's protecting you when you get beat on defense? That's my job, right? Who's getting the ball off the backboard and pitching it out to you to start the fast break when you want to get running? That's my job. In fact, when I think about the Celtics in the 60s, in the mid 50s, Bob Cousy said, once we got Russell, we were gone because now we got that guy on the backboard that can rebound and we can start our fast break because we want to play faster. We can't do that without him. So that doesn't mean that you are more important to me. I need you just as much as you need me, and you need me just as much as I need you.
What is easier to get, a rebound or a steal?
Well, that depends on where you are, because when the ball hits the rim, we got guys crashing the backboard. It's only one guy covering you. If I'm rebounding the basketball, it might be 4 or 5 guys in here and us scrambling to get a rebound. I had a guy say to me that rebounding isn't really a skill because I see guards just walk in and get rebounds. Well, if that's true, then I guess boxing isn't a skill neither. You know, a guy throws you a jab, just move out the way. It's not that simple. No, if it was that simple, then everybody would be doing it. So when I think about rebounding, I think it's a little bit more difficult because I only got one guy trying to steal a basketball from me because it's just he and I. When we talking about a guy like Dennis Rodman or a great rebounder like Moses Malone or Jokic, for example. There's guys gang rebounding against me, and I have to rebound.
But on 50 or 60% of the shots, there's a rebound.
That's correct.
There's a lot more opportunities, and when you look at the numbers, there's way more rebounds than steals.
That doesn't mean that I'm going to get it, though.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying there's way more. So where I'm going with this is, and let me take a pause for a minute to say, it's not that either one of us believes this. This is just debate for conversation's sake.
Great. This is great.
There's more rebounds than steals. Yet we value, like if a guy averages 20 and 10, 20 points, 10 rebounds.
Yep.
Wow. All-time great player. If he averages in the same era, so let's say in the center dominated era, 15 and 3, and 3 is the steals. We consider him average.
He's not a great defense. He's not considered like Magic Johnson.
But I would contest a 15 and 3 guard was just as every bit. Again, we're gonna have to look at assists and other, but every bit the player is a 20 and 10 center.
Well, when you look at a guy but think about Steph Curry. Do we consider Steph Curry a great defensive player? I think he led the league in steals twice.
And no, we consider him a defensive liability most times.
Yeah, we don't consider him to be a great defensive player. Magic Johnson led the league in steals, I think twice. We don't look at Magic as a great defensive player, but Chamberlain or Jabbar or Joel Embiid, a guy like that who leads the league in rebounding, Clint Capella leads the league in rebounding. You know, we're looking at him as an all-league defender.
Yeah.
Right?
My contention is I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong because I think there's way more opportunities for rebounds. In most cases, I understand what you're saying about the gang rebounds, but in most cases, not the tallest guy, but typically the center and the five who's underneath the basket when the shot is up anyways has the best chance at getting the rebounds. How many field goal attempts in an average game?
If I had to guess off the top of my head, we're looking at about 70 to 75 shots in a game.
Okay. So let's call it 80 for to make easy math. That means there's 30 misses at least, right? Most teams don't shoot 50%. There's 30 opportunities. How many times could you steal the ball? Guess what? It's not there for you to steal every single time. Like you have to do something to steal it. So that's what I'm saying. I think we undervalue certain statistics, and I want to put it out there because I want to start. Listen, I don't know what side of this fence I'm on. I'm being honest. I told you this before we started. I said I'm going to take this side because I don't know, because most people are on the, because I'm with you. I look at my list and I've got, Kareem and Wilt and Shaq, and I've got all those same guys in my top 10. But I start to think about it like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. If we're feeding it to a center, then yeah, of course they're going to score more points. If they're 6 inches taller than everybody else, of course they're going to have more rebounds. Typically, on average, look, there's exceptions to the rule, but like if you look at all the top rebounders, what are 90% of them? Power forwards and centers, right? They're power forwards and centers. Now, it's also because of where we position them in the game. So I just think, I wonder, should we give more? And it's a tough one, even for me as I'm saying it. Should we give more credit to steals, to assists, to like John Stockton? Let me bring up John Stockton, because when I said assists, okay, there's one player, my favorite player, LeBron James, who points, like I think the stat is the points that they're accounted for, that they're responsible for, so it takes into assists and all that stuff. He's light years ahead of everybody else, total, mind you, because obviously he's played 19 seasons at an incredible peak. Do you know who's number 2 on points, like accredited for all time?
Steve Nash.
John Stockton. And when we talk about John Stockton, I don't think anyone thinks of him as an all-time great player.
There's plenty of people who do. I get when I talk about Stockton, he's the second best point guard in my view. He's the second best.
Okay, so you give him credit.
I get roasted for this, Tone.
Yeah.
I don't get this. Isn't something that I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know basketball. I'm unfollowing you. It's all kinds of stuff like that all kinds of stuff like that when I talk about Stockton and his importance as an overall basketball player and a lead guard to his team's success. Absolutely, I recognize who Stockton is. But with that being said, I still think that you shortchanging the 5-man because I think you only looking at his responsibility to score the basketball and because he's taller, when in reality he wasn't really that much taller than everybody else, because Chamberlain did have to deal with Russell, who was, like I said, Russell was 6'9". He had to deal with Jabbar.
Okay, but hold on. Russell, hold on. So you had to deal with Russell, who was 6'9". He still has, what's that? 3, 4. How tall was Will? 7'1"?
7'1". He had 4 inches on him.
Unless you ask him, he was probably 7'8". Okay, so he still had 4 or 5 inches on Russell.
Right. With that being said, though, I still have to have a skill set. I can't, just because I'm taller than you can't just throw the ball into me and I'm just going to score it. So
I'm not saying there was no skill. Yeah, I'm not saying there was no skill.
But because that's what it sounds like, Tony. It sounds like you diminishing what I do as a 5-man because I'm a big guy, and just because I'm bigger than everybody else, well, you should be able to do that. Well, wait a minute. No, if that's the case, then how come all big guys aren't 17, 20 rebounds a game? Why aren't all big guys averaging 5, 6 blocks a game? Why aren't all big guys doing that? And the reason why they're not doing that is because they aren't as skilled as some other guys are, which would explain why we only have a certain amount of guys that are in our top 5, top 10 all time as big guys.
Yeah, I think, and yeah, let me restate this in case someone's going to call me an idiot and unfollow me. I'm not suggesting centers, the 5s, don't have skill. What my question is, are we overvaluing centers? Because for 75% of the history of the NBA, it was a center-driven lead where we fed them the ball and let them do their thing on offense. And then on defense, we just let them kind of stand back and block and rebound. And, again, I always try to look at this, and maybe it might be wrong. I'm not saying that it's right. But, if I compare the skill set of the average, again, there's superstar exceptions. I'm not average. Is the average center more or less skilled than the average small forward? Is the average small forward more or less skilled than the average guard? And I think from a skill perspective, ball handling, footwork, the fundamentals of the game, shooting, that's where it gets weird for me, because I don't know that, I'm not saying it's because you're tall, but I'm saying it is a little bit easier. It is a little bit easier when you're tall.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that point too, Tone, because you also got to take under consideration of what my job is. So my job wasn't to dribble the basketball. My job isn't to push the basketball. The game has evolved today. So, from what Larry Bird and Scottie Pippen and small forwards like that to LeBron James and Kevin Durant, the game has evolved for these guys. So I was primarily playing on the box because that was just my job. That doesn't mean that I couldn't have learned how to do those things. It's just that's what I was paid to do, and that was it.
Right. So you're suggesting maybe if it was a different mindset in the 60s and they said, hey, Wilt, when you get that rebound, because you're going to get it 90% of the time, just start dribbling.
And
he possibly could have learned to dribble, and we know he could pass because he led the league in total assists one season, not in assists per game. So let's be clear there. But yeah, so he could obviously pass. Granted, it was from the block and passing out to guards. However, you're suggesting we don't know because they didn't give him the opportunity to dribble and do that stuff. All right, that's fair. So speaking of that, of centers who can do that, there's a center today who I find so interesting, because I always have this argument about players today are so much more athletic than players back in the day, and the older players would never last a minute in today's NBA. That's the voice I make for you guys in case you know when you say that. And there's a player who's not very athletic, who's a big man, who leads his team in every single category, who brings the ball up, who rebounds, who passes, who shoots, who's having himself a pretty good week. And I think if Jamal Murray wasn't hurt and the Denver Nuggets, were a top 3 team in the West, he'd be our runaway MVP.
It wouldn't be close. It wouldn't be close, Tone. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. It would be.
I guess you know who I'm talking about.
I absolutely know who you're talking about. Absolutely, Tone. And that's what it would be.
So talk to me about Joker. This week he's had, not just this week, his whole season, but specifically this week, he's kind of gone off a little bit.
Well, last night, I think he went 30, 19, and 8. And I think it was I think he's got the most 20 and 15 games this season of anybody. Nobody has more 20 and 15 games than he does. And couple that with his ability to just see the floor. He leads the Denver Nuggets in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and he's tied with Aaron Gordon for blocks. All right? Yeah, he's tied with Aaron Gordon for blocks. So he essentially leads his team in every major category. The problem is that Denver isn't very good. And I equate that him being who he is right now to a guy that a lot of people talk about and they expect him to be better, in Luka. Tone, if you remember, when you saw Joker beginning of last season, when he dropped 30 or 40 pounds, I think he was in the best shape of his life. Was it a coincidence that he had his best season as a pro and he got himself in better shape? What have I been talking about Luka more than anything?
Needs to get in better shape.
Luka needs to take better care of his
body. I hate to say it, he looks like a little doughboy.
He looks doughy. Does he not look doughy, Tom?
He looks doughy.
If you didn't know him, if you never saw him and you saw him for the first time and somebody said, yo, this dude is one of the best basketball players on the planet, you'd be like, get the hell out of here.
Yeah, I wouldn't believe it. He looks like me. He looks like me now.
He looks doughy. Right. He doesn't look like a ball player. Joker actually took care of himself. He got himself in better shape. He looks smarter. And I think that if Denver was better, if they weren't decimated by injuries, and if they were better, we wouldn't be talking about Kevin. As good as Kevin Durant is right now, Tone, we're talking about a guy in Kevin Durant who's awesome. Leads the league in scoring, shooting over 60% in the mid-range. we wouldn't be talking about him right now.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this then. Last season, Curry was kind of doing the same thing on a bad team. They were like the 9-10 seed. And look, he didn't get I don't think he necessarily got a sniff of MVP, but we were still talking about him as the MVP.
Yes, we were. Yes, we were.
Why is it that we were talking about Curry as the 9-10 seed and we're not talking about Joker?
Well, number one is because it was a popularity thing. Steph Curry is way more popular than Joker, which is kind of ironic considering Joker was doing way more this season than what Curry was doing. Way more. Curry was buckets. All right. Yeah. Curry is shooting the basketball and Curry is knocking down the long ball all over the place. Joker is cleaning glass. Joker is protecting the rim. Joker is facilitating. Joker is scoring the basketball, which, by the way, Tone, he just looks like a load. Right? He's not, like you just said, Tone, he's not very athletic. Joker isn't blowing your doors off when he gets the ball on the perimeter. He's not doing any of those things.
I keep telling people, like, look, it's fun to watch, Russell Westbrook, 100 miles an hour up and down the court, or, LeBron or whoever kind of jumping over people. But you don't need to do that to be not just a star. You don't need to do that to be a superstar in this league. I've never seen Steph Curry, maybe once, actually make a dunk. I've seen him miss a few. I've never seen Chris Paul. Have you ever seen Chris Paul dunk a basketball? I don't think. Have you? Okay. Very rare though, right?
He dunked in the All-Star game last year, as a matter of fact.
Those All-Star games don't count. So I think that's the only time I saw Curry actually successfully do it was an All-Star game. So my point is, you don't have to be this crazy athletic, leaper to be successful. And guys like this are showing us that you don't. And this is why the fundamentals and, skill set is just as important, if not as important.
IQ too.
We undervalue IQ. So do you think unless they move up, top 4 in the West, he's even going to get a sniff at MVP?
That's correct, Tone. Unless they get to at least a top 5, with him doing what he's doing, they have to be at minimum for us just to have the conversation about him. They have to be in the top 5, just to have the conversation, Tone. Because I already mentioned this in the past. The NBA over the last 40 years, Jabbar's the only guy. Since Jabbar and Russell Westbrook are the only guy from 1975-76 when Jabbar won the league MVP and they didn't make the playoffs. Fast forward 75-76 to 16-17. So that's 40 years later. Right. Russell Westbrook wins the league MVP. Those are the only two guys.
And let's be honest, the only reason he did that is because it had been, 60 years since someone averaged a triple-double.
Which screwed them up, though, Tone. And the reason why I screwed them up is because if that was the basis, then he should have won it 3 more times.
Yeah, exactly.
And he didn't, which is how the NBA recognized. I think we screwed this up, so we got to get back.
Well, I don't think they believed he could do it again, because if you think about it, no one has done it since Oscar in the 60s, and now here comes a guy who's the first one to actually average it for the. It's not happening again. So they kind of went, okay, let's do it, and they went against their kind of philosophy, which is, best player statistically on the best team, right? Who's popular? Let's be honest. Who's
at least a top 3 team. Right. That's what it's always been. It's been on a top 3 team and how important you are to that unit. But when you talk about a guy like Russell Westbrook winning the league MVP, the thing that I couldn't understand for the life of me, Tone, was they based it off of him averaging a triple-double. Tone, the guy who averaged a triple-double the last time, he didn't win the league MVP. I was trying to make sense of that. I'm like, wait a minute. If you're going to base it off that, can that guy at least win the league MVP? Because he didn't.
Well, I think, again, I don't agree with the thinking, but I think the thinking was, okay, hey, most of the guys weren't around back then when he did it, but okay, he did it. Now we go 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and no one's done it again. And now they're thinking, wow, that's actually quite a feat. Maybe those guys made a mistake. Russell doesn't. They're like, well, we're not going to make that same mistake. Right, because it might be another 50 years before someone does that. Let's give him the MVP, and then he goes out and does it again.
Right, so, and again. Right. So when I think about Joker, we're not going to.
How does he do it? How does he do it? I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do want to know, because people are always going to ask. So if he's not athletic, we get it. He has IQ and what? How is he doing this? Like, what do you see in his game that's just like, How is he able to do this?
Well, we got to start the conversation, Tone, with the fact that Joker is a bit of 7 foot. So we'll start that. We'll start right.
So it's easier because he's tall.
Well, not just easier, because we got to add in his Scott. Because I know where you're going with that, but we got to add in his skill set too. That's important. Joker is an exquisite passer. Joker is great at passing the basketball. Joker, he gets a lot of guys, and a lot of people don't talk about this with Denver. They play a lot of pick and roll action with him in the 4-man, which means that you got the 5 switching on to the 4, and I got a 4-man 17, 19 feet away from the basket, and he'll be able to just knock down an 18-footer, and then he'll just drag that guy even further away from the basket and take him to the basket. So Joker exploits a lot of mismatches. Joker finds a lot of guys when they have mismatches, so he's smart in that aspect. Joker's ability to rebound, and again, Tone, you mentioned about Joker not being very athletic. That's where positioning, that's where technique comes in, which makes me nuts when I hear people say, rebounding isn't a skill. Well, if it wasn't a skill, then how come everybody isn't averaging 30 rebounds a game?
Let me tell you something, because I don't think I get an argument with this. The best, if not the best rebounders ever is Dennis Rodman. I think we all agree with that.
No doubt.
And I guarantee you want to make fun of him because he looks weird and he dresses funny and he does some stuff. I will tell you this right now. There is nobody in the history of the NBA who understands, I don't know if it's geometry, angles, better than Dennis Rodman. He explains it really funny. He was like, boom, I'm over here. Bang, I'm over there. But the reality is he knows if a shot comes from 20 feet from here and it has a high arc, the likelihood that it's going to bounce this way is very slim. It's probably going to bounce that way. And I'm just making this up. He knows that.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because as ridiculous as it sounds, it's absolute fact.
It's fact. I know. I'm saying it and I'm thinking, I can't believe I'm saying it. And he knows, well, because of the way that it's going to go here. So what do? I just run over there. And guess what happens? It falls into my hand. And everyone's like, oh, that was so easy. It just fell into his hand. No. As there's a guy on TikTok who does jokes with his son. And he asks his son a question and his son answers and he says, no, dummy. Right? That's what I want to say. No, dummy. It didn't just fall into his hand. Right. He saw where it came from. He saw the way it was spinning even. And he saw the arc of it. And he said, okay, based on that, right? And he does that math, just think of Beautiful Mind.
That's a skill.
The equation in the air. He's like, it's going to land over. And he runs over there and then it lands it. So,
it's a skill. It's like me developing a skill.
Yeah. It's like when people say, this person's an overnight success. And the person's like, yeah, I've only been working 20 years, day and night to do this.
You just got here. We've been doing this.
Yeah. And now I'm an overnight success just because you only heard of me last night.
Right.
So Joker definitely, it's about positioning. And that it's definitely a skill.
Mm-hmm.
So from one guy, who's just killing it, who's, I think, exceeding expectations. Like, I really think, like I said at the beginning of this, he might be the most underrated MVP we've seen in a very, very long time, if not ever. To a guy that, and this is where I said, at the beginning of the show, I said, I hate when I'm right about bad things.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw Zion Williamson blow at his shoe. If you remember that game where I think he turns and pivots and his shoe just explodes. And I said, I'm really nervous about Zion. And I said, because I look at, I do like fundamentals. I watch footwork. I'll give you a quick little story. I remember Rick Pitino. I was at the University of Kentucky for a basketball camp. And, I bring up Tony Delk all the time because I really like Tony Delk's game. And Rick says, what are you trying to learn? And I said, listen, I'm a really good shooter. Like, I'm just a really good shooter. But I think my weakness is on the defensive side, footwork. I don't, I need to get better at my positioning because I know that I'm not the fastest guy and people are getting by me, but I know that if I can position myself better, I'm smart enough to know that's what would help me. He said, okay, this is what I want you to do. He sits me down and I'm looking at the court. He goes, who do you think is kind of the better defenders on the team? And I'm like, Tony and Roderick Rhodes. Roderick Rhodes, you played with him in high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, okay, don't look at anything going on in the game. Just watch their feet. Nothing else. Just watch their feet. And from that day forward, I was like watching the feet and seeing like how it's positioned. You never see them kind of crossing over their legs and, those certain things. And I said, okay. So from that point on, I always kind of watched that footwork in the position because I understood that was something I needed to improve on.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward to Zion. So I'm watching Zion. I'm like, he doesn't have good feet. in the sense that I don't see the way that he runs, the way that he lands, and his size. I always thought he's going to have weight issues, and I think that's going to lead to injuries, and there might be injuries that he can't come back from. And everyone's like, no, you're crazy. He's a crazy athlete. He's, Barkley's second coming. He's the second coming of LeBron. He's so athletic. He's so incredible. And I said, yeah, I agree with all those things. I just don't think he's going to be on the court long enough to do that. And the reason I'm looking down is because I wanted to make sure I had the numbers right. Games played in their first 3 seasons. Zion, 85. Greg Oden, 82.
Yeah.
Is there hope for Zion? Because I really hope there is, because I think the league's more fun when he's in it.
Well,
or is this something that it's just we're going to look back and say, man, that's a shame.
Let me ask you this, Tone. How long, if you had to give me a number, how long do you think Zion's going to be around? We're in year 3 now, and he hasn't played a game in this season. How much longer do you think he's going to be around?
I think much like Odin, he'll about 5 seasons, because someone will give him. He'll hopefully get healthy, and someone will give him a chance. So I think, and then another injury probably. So I think 5 years, and he's selling real estate.
Now the difference between him and Greg Oden was that he actually showed us.
Oh yeah,
and he actually showed us the potential of him being elite. He did make the All-Star team last year. He was 26-7, shot over 60% from the floor. So he did make the All-Star team.
Oh, right? Yeah, that's why I say when he's playing, I love watching him. Yeah.
I was watching this dude, and I'm thinking to myself, if he could put a mid-range in his game, I think that he could be one of the faces of the league. Now, when I think about what his body looks like, now I'm having a hard time with the whole weight issue thing, because I just saw a picture of him about a week ago, and it was a picture of him in a mall with a kid, and he doesn't look over 300 pounds. Not to mention,
right? But then I also saw a picture of him in that red hoodie where he looks every bit 350.
And that was way before the season even started.
Okay.
That was way before the season even started. With that being said, we talking about a guy who I don't think that he wants to be in New Orleans more than anything. I don't think that he wants to be there.
Do you think I think
that has a lot to do with it. I don't think that he motivated. Wants to be there. Yeah, I don't think he wants to be there, and I think that that's a problem that's escalating into him having quote unquote weight issues or him being injured. Now, I will ask you this: you told me 5 years. I was thinking more like 6 or 7, because I don't see Zion playing 12 seasons. I don't think he's going to hold up that long. No, I don't think he's going to hold up that long. So, if I could give you, Tone, if I could give you what you got last year out of him, that 26-7, if I could give you 25-7 over the next 4 years, would you take that?
Would I take it? Of course I would take it, but I don't think I'm going to get 70 games out of you in those 4 years.
That was my next question right there. That's what I was leading to, because he hadn't played all season. So if I'm gonna get you that 25-7, can I also get 60 games out of you? If you can get 60 games out of him, maybe even 65 games, even though there's no evidence right now that he can give you that, because he hasn't played all this season. He played last season, but his rookie year he hasn't played. But if I could get that, knowing what the future looks like, where I don't think he's going to hold up for another 10 years. I just don't think he's going to hold up. But if you could get 5 years out of him at 25-6 or 27-8 and 60 games, would you take that?
I would 100. Listen, I would take a chance on Zion.
Right.
If I'm a team that has 2 really important things, a great training staff and maybe this goes in with the training staff, but a great kind of like dietitian /
that's part of it.
That because I know in my heart, I know this kid has the talent and can develop the one skill that you said, the mid-range, that could make him elite. What he doesn't have is, and if he's not motivated, then that's actually a red flag for me. Because for me, if I'm Zion and I'm in New Orleans, I say, I don't want to be here. Do you know what I do to get out? I get in the best shape of my life. I play really well, and I say, listen, I just don't want to be here. And that's the easiest way to get out, because being hurt and, overweight, and, now he's going to get a bad rep of, he's not a hard worker, and, all those things.
And that was my next point that I was going to make to you, Tone. They're going to lose him anyway, right? They're going to lose him. So what are we holding on to when we talking about we're resting him for this, we're resting him for that? Now, the injury that he has with his foot, we still don't know exactly how serious it is. Is it an issue where the bone's not healing correctly? Is it there's not any blood flow getting to the bone? Or is it just something that is just nagging? With that being said, I'm going to lose this guy in the next year or two, right? I'm going to lose him. So if I'm going to lose him, I might as well get everything that I can get out of him now, and not let him walk out the front. Because, Tone, what you can't have
who's
is
trading for him now?
That's my point, healthy. And the way he's going to get help, I do have to get him healthy. I can't fight that part. However, but I do, once I get him healthy, I got to get him on the floor, because what I just did was I spent the #1 pick in the draft on him. I can't have him walk out the front door and just lose him for nothing. That could set us back years.
Just think about it. If you get him healthy, 2 games, 25-8, and everyone's he's back. They're all trading for him. They're going to give you the first round, 2 first rounds, whatever you want for him. You'll get that. But when he's, rumored to be 300 and, I know we see the pictures, we don't know, but when he's rumored to be 350 pounds, he's not coming back. We don't know the severity of the foot injury. They're not taking that as we're doing something wrong. They're putting out those stories that, he's just lazy. He doesn't want to do it. And then that's not a rap that now you're a GM and you're like, well, I don't want a lazy, overweight guy, who doesn't want to work.
Right.
So, that's why I say he might be his own worst enemy if it's true. We don't know. We're just speculating. But if he truly doesn't want to be in New Orleans, this is the wrong way to get out. Right? Like, the best way is, hey, Paul George wanted to, go be with his guy on that
Clippers team,
San Diego Clippers, the paper clips. And what did he do? He didn't stop playing. He played really well. And he said, hey, guys, like, I want to go. And they worked it out. And they made, he forced his way out of there, but it's because he's good. If you're not good,
it's not happening.
It's not happening. So let me say this too, because I'll get a lot of heat for it. I want him to play. I want him to be healthy. I think he could be like you said, a face of a franchise. And so even when I said it, I got a lot of heat when I said it when he was coming out of college. And I said, I'm worried. Right, he could be Barkley. He could also be Oliver Miller. I don't know if you remember the Big O. Right, he could be both. And I hope he's more Barkley than Miller. But you just really don't know. And it's too bad because he's so good. He's so fun to watch. So I hope that they can figure out whatever that injury is and he gets back on the court. So that's it for this week, Fluid and Chill NBA edition. Check out the NFL edition. I had to take a second to think about the NFL because we're getting close to the playoffs. NFL edition on Friday. And Monday was another great TikTok live. Get your questions in early because we only got an hour. If you've watched it this far, you probably should be subscribing and setting the reminder so you don't miss the next episode. Don't forget to check out Sports Fluent. And you're on this side, Chilltown Hoops. I know you already do, but I got to say it anyways. And until next week,
take it light, but take it.